Hey everyone, welcome to this month's storytelling podcast brought to you by Indonesian Lantern. And today we are going to delve deep on a certain topic in the AAPI community, and that is mental health.
So I live with my mom and she's Indo and my dad is white, but my mom has been mostly the leading figure in my life. So I think I have a lot to say about this topic because most of the way that I've been raised has been like that more Indo, like Asian way of raising. So I'm currently a high school senior living here in South Philly and what about me? So I am like a very like free spirit person, as I've said. I love to explore. So my hobbies are kind of all over the place. I do love my Indonesian culture, so I am part of the Indonesian dance group Modero,
Oh wow!
and I perform with them all the time. I'm part of our professional troupe, and it's so much fun.
How'd you
Um,
get into Modero?
I it's actually so funny. This is like the first thing I ever did when I came to Philly. I came to Philly and then
Wow!
within days my mom was in contact with Tanta Cinta and she was like,
Of
"My daughter
course,
is joining that group." And
of
guess
course,
what?
not the Sinta.
I joined that group and I just love it so much. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I also do gamelan. I've been doing
Oh,
gamelan since I was in Boston actually. I did a little bit of dance in Boston but not much, but
mm,
I've really been doing gamelan since I was in like fourth grade.
wow!
So I love playing music. I love engaging with things like that, and also like I just love to, you know, engage with music. I'm a music nerd.
She's a
Um,
bassist, by the way.
yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
But I
Yo,
also I also like I do dance like outside of Indo dance too. So that's that's like one aspect of myself. And then there's like I love like reading and I love researching. So another hobby of mine is literally just looking up books and like downloading free PDFs because I don't have money.
like, what made you move to Philly?
It's actually like
Like,
really
what was the
funny.
attraction?
There's like no Indonesian people in Boston. I'm so serious. I knew like five, and one of them was my mom.
Oh
So
wow!
it's definitely like I think I mean I barely speak Indo now, but at least I know more about the country and the culture. It was first of all cost. Boston is crazy expensive, especially when like you look at the schools around there. So typically a lot of people there are like highly educated and
Mm.
then the prices go up because they're all like with degrees, getting high paying jobs or whatever. So it was rough. And so we were like, let's go to Philly because my mom visited Philly on her birthday and was
Oh,
like, this is such a fun city. We should just move there.
oh wow!
That was a little bit of a
Wow,
crazy
really?
decision, but
Impulsiveness. I
yeah,
like it.
but I do love that impulsiveness because that's why I'm here. And, I have no idea where I would be if I was in Boston right now. But I moved here and, it was so great. As I said, one of the first things that I did when I came here was joined Modero. So I really loved getting to know my culture, getting to know more Indonesian people, more experiences, especially like I love making friends who are like people who just moved here because their cultural context and their like lives are just so different from mine. So, we're
Fortunately.
struggling, but honestly, Philly, I would say, is a lot more fun to live in than Boston.
So, what high school did you go to?
So I go to Palumbo right now, and next year I'm going to Princeton.
Woo!
Yay! Really
Congrats!
excited.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
That's a big
Yeah,
stepping stone.
yeah,
Yeah. Oppenheimer went to
yeah.
Princeton.
They filmed it there.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's a very anxious process.
Mm.
Like for me, I mentioned it just now, but I should clarify. So I applied through a program called Questbridge National College Match, and in that, it's basically guarantees pretty much a full ride
Mm.
to like um you rank schools, and the school that's highest on your list that accepts you, you binded to that school. And so I was really looking forward to it, and I was really hoping that I would get success from it because as a low income student, that's the goal. Like that's what I
Mm.
really need. But then seeing, especially when I was talking about earlier my feelings of inadequacy, it was like I would look at people, obviously I was exaggerating, but I would genuinely see people who I was like, wow, like they work so incredibly hard and they have done so much, probably I would say more than me, like the when I considered it, and then they didn't get into the school and I was like, wow, like what was the point of all of that? Like I would rather give up my spot because do I really even deserve to be in this school if there's people who are working harder? But then of course, coming back to like looking at things in a greater context, there's also people who got into that school who are legacies and have like barely anything to offer to the table, but they're like, "Oh, your family has money and your dad and your grandfather and your great grandfather went here, so you're welcome."
I'm
Like
a
that's
trust
all they
fund
had to read.
baby.
Yeah, that's all they had to read, and they were like, well, "Come on in." So it's like there's gonna be people who you might feel are over
Gotcha.
more qualified or less qualified, and regardless, it's like I just have to like not internalize everything that I see and like go at everything on my personal journey. And now like I'm developing a better mindset about it. I'm like, regardless of whether or not there might have been people who deserve to get in more, what happened is I got in, and all I can do is like hope for the best, that they go on a path that like is most conducive to their success, and hopefully this path that I'm on is most conducive to my success, and I'll
Mhm.
just like keep going full steam ahead and like not worry too much about things that are like completely and utterly out of my control.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Like as a kid, I was definitely very childlike, very extroverted. I still have that to this day, but I wasn't very worried about other people's perceptions of me for quite a while, and I think that was very good. And honestly, like I wish I could return to that right now. But definitely like once the age of puberty hit and then people started like being really judgmental is when I started to develop like insecurities and fears of like not being worthy enough or not being able to amount to what people expect of me, because of course like there's the stereotype in the Asian community that like parents have these crazy expectations, and I would say that my mom has never really pushed me that much. Definitely I think that there's an aspect of the fact that I didn't really need to be pushed, as in like I just love doing things that parents typically like. I like to listen, I like to do my schoolwork, so it was never really something where I was like, oh, I have to perform well. But once I started witnessing people around me develop those mentalities, then it really started to just trickle into my life. And I would be like, oh, is this person doing better than me? Like, I don't want my mom to know. I want to be the best so that, like, the people around me can see that. And then whenever I wasn't in that spot, I would be like, oh, I'm a failure. It's over. I'm never getting anything in life.
the rebellious stage is real in
Yeah,
teenagers
yeah.
and young kids.
Yeah,
Always.
definitely. Once I
All
was like,
kids.
oh, I'm losing grip of like this perfect life that I have built in my head for myself. I'm like, well, might as well like just break a few more rules. But it was never as fulfilling as I thought it would be. So that ended quickly for me.
I mean,
For me, like a lot of what I've been feeling recently is especially because of like being accepted into such a prestigious school. I've often felt like
mm,
a lot of like imposter syndrome where like I look at people around me and I'm like, did I really deserve this as much as like this person? Like maybe they work harder than me and maybe like I just got lucky. And I think that's often like a very common sentiment that I see,
in
especially in like
Palumbo, right?
yeah,
Or
like
Princeton.
just in my for Princeton, I'm thinking, but
Oh,
also like I look at my peers who maybe I look at them and I'm like, wow, they worked so hard, they've gone through so much, and they didn't get accepted to the school that I did, and I'm like, wow, like did I really deserve to get in there? Because like look at all these people who didn't. But then I think obviously you don't see everything, you don't see all the details about everyone else's lives, but I think like learning to not compare
mhm,
myself with others so much is huge,
very
because I
big
think
deal.
almost the root of almost, yeah, probably every single one of the issues that I face mentally are just due to me comparing myself to others. So it's just this constant ideal that I want to reach, but like when you think about it, especially with social media and things like that, one of
Mhm.
the biggest sentiments that I constantly find myself having to remind myself of as I go on there is like everyone is just presenting their ideal self. And to a degree, that's also how it is in real life. Very rarely will you meet someone and they're introducing themselves and they're like, oh, and by the way, like I cried myself to sleep last night. Like everyone has their own issues, everyone has their own struggles, weaknesses, things that like they might not want to share. Um, and so, like, just because you have things that you are worried about or you think that make you worse off than other people. Not worse off, but like make you worse than other people. There's probably a bunch of people just like you who are just you don't know anything about them. For me, like, I don't know if I've heard anything overarching, but I definitely try to talk to my peers and I really try to be there for them. And I'm sure that they would say the same for me. Like, we're all a very, I would say, close community. And so from what I hear, it is a lot of like the typical things that you would expect, but I think especially a lot of people who are coming from like parents who are immigrants, one of the things that I see like very prominently is people feeling like their struggles aren't comparable. So when they feel like they are struggling with their mental health or something academic or something social, they like are worried to bring it to their parents because they don't want to say like, oh, my parents have been through so much more. That's how they view it. And especially, I think that's also like a little bit of a problematic mindset that a lot of parents have towards their children too is like, oh, I did so much for you. So all of your problems aren't that serious because I went through so much more, or just like I've lived longer than you and I've experienced more. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And I think like it gets brushed off a lot. But I think like actually acknowledging really minuscule issues leads to like better mental health overall by just like not letting those things go to the wayside and assuming that they're not a big deal, because that's what leads them to snowball and like become a really big deal.
Right.
Definitely suicidal ideation is something that I've seen like arise within my friends, and it's like just this type of mentality where it's like, oh, if I've already lost like this success that my parents were expecting of me, or even I was expecting of myself, then it's like, what's the point? Like my life is just gonna be grim forever, and it's like just repetitive like failures and like an inability to like acknowledge the small successes. I think especially leads to that type of mentality, and I definitely don't want to fault anyone who feels that way because it's definitely like I don't want to say it's valid because I don't want to say like, oh, you should start thinking that, but it's like of course, like everyone has their reasons. And I think, especially within households or even like communities as a whole, where people are told that, like, oh, you just need to like stomach it and, keep working, especially in our society that's like very focused on like constantly working. What can you produce? When you feel like you can't produce anything, then it's like, what's my value on this earth anymore? Especially looking at the fact when they're like going back to the sacrifices of immigrants, when they're like, if my parents did all of that just for me to not even be successful, then I failed them, or like I didn't really do enough to make all of their sacrifice worth it. But at the end of the day, if you're alive and you're doing what makes you happy, like that's all that a parent, I would say, should really be wishing for their children. And ultimately, regardless of what people say, I think that that is what most parents genuinely do wish for, more than like the fact that they'll point to really high earning jobs is mainly because they recognize the comfort and ease that can come along with it. But like if you are happy even if you aren't living those lavish lifestyles, I think that like at the end of the day, that is what like your family and your community wants to see.
Like especially.
I think that just open communication within households and within families is something that is like really not, I don't think it's pointed to enough as like something that is really beneficial. Even just someone being given the room to express themselves, regardless if people are responding or giving them like clear support or outlines on what they should do. Sometimes you really are talking to someone and you just don't know how to help, but the fact that you're there and you're listening definitely like helps people feel heard, helps them feel appreciated and recognize that like there are people who care about what they have to say, even if it's like negative or down or whatever. And so I think like definitely organizing like community groups among teens where maybe they people are just more comfortable expressing themselves to people who are in similar states as them rather than their parents. I think that, I definitely do say that like my extroversion is a key to a lot of the things that I have in my life. I just love to talk. I love to meet new people. And so a lot of the times like I am in like what, like 7 clubs in my school, and I'm like active.
Wow.
Like I show up and it's
What's
like,
going on? What clubs?
oh my gosh. I'm in I'm in my news team. I'm in our National Honor Society. We have a K-pop club where we like do
What?
covers of K-pop dances.
Yo, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
We have mock trial. There's also this thing called Ethics Bowl, which is
Okay.
like something similar to that. And I don't know if I can remember the other ones, but those are the ones that I mainly show up to.
That like, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for having me. I had so much fun.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.